Welcome to the City of Florissant Podcast, where we talk anything and everything related to the beautiful City of Florissant.
Hi, I'm Mayor Tim Lowery, and welcome to another edition of the Mayor's Podcast Show. With me today is Jim McHugh, who's the Student Election Judge Coordinator with the St. Louis County Board of Elections. Welcome, Jim. Thank you for coming today. Jim is going to talk to us about two programs with the Board of Election Commissioners. First is the election judges and the student election judges. And I know how important it is right now that we have an election coming up August the 2nd, and I know that you need a lot of election judges. So kind of tell us about the programs and how they work.
Well, first of all, Your Honor, thanks for having me. And on behalf of the St. Louis County Board of Elections, we are certainly pleased to be here this afternoon. Let me begin by saying just when the average voter goes to vote and cast their vote, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that make that election happen. And probably one of the most important, if not the most important part of that equation in executing an election properly is our election judges, having people there that perform duties that make sure that votes are cast fairly and that voters have access to the franchise. So it's a critical piece to our operations as an election authority to do our duty. On elections such as the one coming up on August 2nd, we're going to have over 220 places, polling places across St. Louis County that will have election judges and their managers there performing their duties. And right now, to be honest with you, we are in the need of election judges. This election right now will have close to 2,400 people working the election. And this is kind of a part-time on-call workforce that has, many of them are very experienced in their job in terms of how to perform and do an election. But there's always room for more people because as the years go on, we have to replenish our ranks because we have folks that either retire or move to another city. And so it's critical for us to keep that flow, that labor force flow into our polling places. So I think when you look at the election judge duties, when you come in to vote, those election judges have done a lot in terms of being trained, how to set up not only the flags and the signs, but also the voting equipment, the printers. All of those things are done by election judges, and they're the ones that literally, they're the ones that are in charge of recording the votes and making sure that those votes at the end of the day are done properly, that the numbers that match the paper ballots match what's actually on the electronic thumb drive. When you go in there and vote, you see a lot of people that get their ballot printed, and then they put it in through a scanner, if you will, and then that scanner records that vote. But as you also know, that the ballot will take down below in a secure box that paper trail. So that paper trail and that electronic number have to match as close as possible. And so that means the people of election judges are responsible generally for that. And so what we do is we have a 3-hour training program online. And then for our new judges, we have a thing called Practice Makes Perfect, which is on-site training for 2 hours so the people can actually touch the equipment, kick the tires, if you will, and making sure that they really understand what they're doing. And so between that and the managers that we have, that's a little step above an election judge, but an experienced election judge, these folks put on our elections. And it's very important that we have a bipartisan balance. By Missouri state law, we have to have an equal amount of Republicans and an equal amount of Democrats working at each polling place. It is a requirement that we must abide by. And what we've seen over the years is that there are certain areas of the county that have an abundance of Democrats and not a lot of Republicans, or just the opposite. There are a lot of Republicans and not enough Democrats. And so here in Florissant, for example, it has a predominance of Democrats. And we certainly encourage anyone to become an election judge, but we are really encouraging Republicans in the Florissant area to step up, and if we would love to have them participate as election judges. So that's kind of it in a nutshell with election judges. There's more to it, obviously, as one applies and gets trained. Now, I think you asked about the high school election judge. Now, they complement the election judges. They can't do all of the duties that an election judge can because the requirements are different. Like, for example, an election judge has to be 18 years of age and has to be a registered voter in the state of Missouri. High school election judges are different. They have to be at least sophomore to senior. They have to be in good academic standing. And when they're 15, they can get what they call, a lot of schools, talk about community service hours. And they can earn those as some required schools have for graduation. But when they're 16, they can also get the service hours, or they can be paid. If this person's a senior in a high school and he's 18 or she's 18 years of age, they can become election judges and still either get service hours or get paid. The high school election judges perform a very important task, and that is two. One is they get to check in voters, because as the voters come in, you all see those iPads at the election polling place. Well, they can help check in voters. The second job they have is really important, is the tracker. They have an Apple phone that they kind of count every half hour how many people are in line. Now, the reason that's important is that information is sent back to us at the election board, and then we're able to take those numbers and let voters know how many people are in line. So when a voter, as you well know now, you don't have to vote at it used to be called your assigned polling place. Now it's called your nearest polling place. And what we can do is we can let voters know where that voter is, where the closest polling place is, and we can let them know how busy it is, because those students are sending that information to us. Matter of fact, we started this, I think, in November of 2020, and one story I have that happened to me was there was a gentleman that was, it was like 6:20 in the evening, and the gentleman was just crossing over the Missouri River in Chesterfield. He lived in the deepest part of Oakville, and he called and he said, where can I vote? Where's the closest place? Well, I was able to look at the information because the students were sending that information to us, and was able to not only guide him to the closest voting place in Chesterfield, I was able to get him to the closest place that also had the least amount of people in the voting line. So it really is it's a service that our voters really now come to expect from us. And we actually got some of those ideas from our own election judges and citizens who've made suggestions over the past, and we take those suggestions very seriously as we try to improve our services each election.
Actually, in November 2020 election, I actually utilized that service because my election line at my polling place was probably an hour. So Jim, I'm happy you guys went to that service because it made such a big difference for me. I was busy that day. I was able to go to that other polling place, waited 10 minutes, got in and voted, where it's going to be well over an hour at my assigned polling place. So what a great service that you guys are now providing.
Well, thank you. It's really interesting, too, because getting back to the high school students, and we look at that high school student program is not only a functional in terms of operations, but it really instills, we think, in our young people some sort of idea of civic responsibility and doing something for your community. And we work a lot with the high schools across the area, private, public, homeschool, everyone. And we really are getting good quality young men and women who are coming in to do their service. And a lot of them will not only like the first election they'll work, but we have several students that'll work 3 or 4 elections until they turn 18. And then some of them who maybe stay in town for a career or go to a local university will continue their service, which helps us replenish the ranks because we have a whole new generation of judges that are coming in. Because if you really look at it, a lot of the people do this because of the service involved. I mean, there is a stipend, there is a wage that we pay people, but for the most part, people do this because they care about their community, they care about their nation, they care about being involved in the most precious right an American has is to vote, and they take that charge very seriously. And so for us, we're very fortunate because they really are the backbone of our workforce. We have other volunteers that do other things, so I shouldn't neglect not mentioning them as well, the volunteer technicians and the deputy judges that we have that kind of rove around the St. Louis County area during the election to make sure things are going smoothly. All of these folks do it because they love their country and they love their community.
So, of course, the polling places are open, I believe it's 13 hours, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m.
That is correct.
So do you look for people that can fulfill that whole day, or
No.
It doesn't matter, just as many hours as you can get out of people?
No, you have to do a whole day. Okay. I mean, for example, our election judges have to be at their polling places at 5 a.m. because by state law, the poll has to be open by 6 a.m. Sure. So what they would do is they do the setup of the equipment, et cetera, to get ready. And it takes, a little under an hour to get that done. Now, some of our judges are able to get into buildings the day before, but not all. And it helps basically with the signage and getting all that done. But for the most part, you got to be there at 5 a.m. Now, of course, you get a lunch break of 1 hour. And then during the day, you're working with fellow judges. I mean, you're going to have someone's going to have to take a break here and there, obviously, so you're not chained to your chair for all the hours except for your lunch break. And we have good camaraderie among our judges. So, hey, I need to take a break, and everyone knows how to cover for each other. And so it's a long day, but and usually the polls close at 7. The students usually can leave a little bit after the election, but the election judges have to stay longer to make sure everything is properly shut down and everything is done right before they ship off the packs of bags that have the thumb drive and the votes in the bags.
So, of course, it could last longer, though. I mean, if there's people in line, they're going to get the opportunity to vote.
Yep. It could be longer. It depends on how busy the election is. I mean, obviously, there are some elections, like municipal elections, as you well know, that have turnouts that are maybe not as high as a primary, or certainly not as high as a general election. But there are times when people have been there a long time. I mean, it has to be done, and the election judges know that once they apply and once they're accepted and once they're trained, they understand those duties.
Of course, a very important election on August the 2nd. I mean, there's a Senate race there. We've got the county races with the county executive. So there's a lot of important issues on this ballot. So I would imagine voter turnout will be fairly high at this election.
It could be. That's usually our experts back at the office that make those predictions. But, I think last time we had in 2020, we had a 40% voter turnout in the primary. Sure. And it just varies. I mean, for example, this last municipal election, this. I mean, you saw the difference, the variances in voter turnout, simply because if there was a real hot contested election, people come out and vote. I mean, for example, this being in the municipal league, the mayor of Webster Grove's race, the first time they had an open mayor's race in 24 years, instead of having the usual 25% voter turnout, over 50% of people in Webster turned out to vote for that particular election because they had not a contested election in a long time. So those little proclivities kind of drive voter turnout throughout the county. So it's kind of hard to predict, but our people who do the predictions are pretty right on most of the time.
They're that good.
They are. They're that good.
Yeah, they can look at the ballot and realize what's on there and kind of look at that.
Correct.
So, Jim, people that want to apply for these positions, what do they do? They got a website? How do they get a hold of you?
There's a couple of things they can do. They can first give us a call at 314-615-1865. That's the direct line. Now, we have they can go to, I'm going to do this very slowly so people can, it's voteforstlco.com/poll access. Now I'll do the slow part. VOTE, the number 4, STLCO.com/POLLACCESS, poll access. And of course, they can follow us online at St. Louis County MoVotes.gov. That's St. Louis County MoVotes.gov, all one word. There's no period in that. And people can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well for the most up-to-date information that's going on the election board. And so we encourage everyone to vote. We certainly we try to make it as convenient as possible. When you get your little card in the mail, it'll give you that in bold. It'll give you the closest polling place, but we'll also give 3 or 4 or 5 different places, and which are just as nearby as that first one. And we expect people to go to their polls. I mean, we're going to probably expect 25% of the voters will probably vote in a polling location that's not their prime voting spot. That's what it's been averaging.
So when you go to the poll, what do you have to bring with you?
Well, that's interesting. And I'm going to be very general on this because we've just passed a new election bill. For now, all of the laws that previously were for each election in the past will be done the same way. I mean, the law changes on August 28th. The primary is August 2nd. So basically, if you're going to bring anything to the poll for this particular election, I want to emphasize it changes a lot for November. But for this particular one, obviously some photo ID, a bank statement that has your address on it, utility bill, things like that. Student IDs, all those things can be used. And you can go to our website or call us to find out. But after August 28th, it changes. And there's a whole different kind of procedure that we're going to have to go through for the November election. And I wouldn't do it justice for me to try to explain that until...
We'll handle that one. We'll take care of that one closer to the
November
election.
That'll be one that could be a whole program in itself, yes. Mayor.
So Jim, I'm sure you're aware that the city of Florissant has Proposition A on our ballot here in the city of Florissant for a 20-year, $10 million bond issue for our aquatic centers. Of course, that will require a 4/7 majority to pass. So we're certainly hoping that our citizens here in the city of Florissant get out and vote, because this is an important issue with the city of Florissant, plus all the other things that are on there for the state of Missouri, St. Louis County. So it really is a very important election for everybody to get out and vote. Is there anything else, Jim, that you'd like to touch on that we've not talked about?
Generally speaking, we have so many other people behind the scenes that work so hard. We got some really smart, hard-charging people that I work with. And I also want to mention one thing. The bipartisan culture in our office is so strong, and it's really, really led by Eric Fay, our Democratic director, and Rick Stream, our Republican director. Those two, along with our deputy directors and our board, really drill home to every employee that you leave your politics at the door. You walk through the door, and our job is to make sure this election is done fairly, it's administered properly. And I've been in government all my life, and I can honestly say I haven't worked with a better group of people that are dedicated to the task, who may disagree outside the office, but who work marvelously together to make sure the citizens of St. Louis County have an election board they can be proud of, and one that does it the right way.
And I'll tell you what, as first of all, as a citizen and an elected official, I certainly appreciate what the St. Louis County Election Board has done and the way they run their elections. And I've had the opportunity to be around many of these people that you mentioned, and certainly 100% professional. And that's the way our elections are 100% professional. So we appreciate the work you guys do.
Well, thank you. They're done well, and they're done secure. And Mayor, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it on behalf of everyone back at the St. Louis County Election Board.
Jim, thanks for being here today. This will conclude another Mayor's Podcast. We are Florissant Strong.